Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. We're wondering how to stop the spiral in Venezuela, political standoff and a food crisis all jumbled together in the country that's home to the world's second largest oil reserves. With us, Venezuelan political scientist Natalia Brandler, director of the Paris-based Latin American Studies Group, Venezuelan financial strategist Luis Colasanti, welcome back. Welcome back as well to Christophe Ventura, fellow at the French International Relations Research Center, IRIS, and of the online publication Mémoires de Lutte. And joining us from Northwestern University in Chicago, the Kellogg School of Business, Daniel Landsberg Rodriguez. Welcome back to all of you. Just before the break, there was the talk about the talks that are happening this week, a State Department official who's in Caracas, in the Dominican Republic, and that big Organization of American States meeting on Venezuela that is happening. If those talks fail, sanctions could follow. So says Luis Almagro. He's the Secretary General of the Organization of American States. Now, his remarks have drawn the ire of Caracas.
My hand is extended for dialogue and peace. It is never too late. Do not think you can burn Venezuela or intervene. You can do neither. Venezuela needs dialogue, peace.
It is a conchupancia, a conspiracy that exists between the Venezuelan opposition, which is deeply anti-democratic and coup-oriented, and the Secretary General of this organization, who decided without any mandate to put aside the rules of the organization to promote a coup in Venezuela.
Christophe Ventura, is there a conspiracy?
There are a lot of pressures from everywhere, from the inside, but also from the outside. It's pretty clear. I mean, you have a lot of leaders from oppositions who are very close friends in the US, in Europe too, in Spain, in the media. It is true, like Bolivarians have also friends in Latin America, in other countries, other governments, and that's what politics is. I think that about Luis Almagro, we have to be clear that Luis Almagro has been defeated within the Organization of American States, because on Thursday the debate will come on the fact, if Venezuela has to be suspended from the organization. But Venezuela won a very important diplomatic battle, asking for a sort of assessment of Luis Almagro work and direct implication in the conflict, and this demand has been accepted by all the permanent council of the organizations. So it means that today people are there is a lot of prudence about what's happening in Venezuela.
Prudence, and to Daniel Landsberg's point before the break, that for the government in Caracas, it's all about buying time so that after the end of the year, there won't be enough time to name a new president, and Maduro can effectively name his own vice president. That's
the point. If the referendum would take place in January, after the 10th of January, it would be not a new election, but the vice president will come to replace Maduro until the campaign for the presidential election, which would be less than 10 months later, something like that. If the referendum is organizing before December, which is probably not the case because the government says that it won't happen like this, there will be an anticipated election. But what is at stake is to know if this election is a positive point in the situation where we are today, or if the best thing for all Venezuelans is to have stability and to organize an improvement of economical problems. That's the very sensitive political question as to all Latin America, because what if the country would fall in a civil war? It would be a deflagration for all the region. That's where we are.
All right, Luis Colasanti, how long can the country hold out under this current crisis? And it's going to be months, no matter what happens, right? Before there's any political closure.
I think if we spoke about only the economical crisis, we can say some days. But I think the more important point will be the dialogue can be achieved only if they have a roadmap very clear, with a specific point, because Luis Almagro, he tried in 2014 to have a dialogue between Maduro and the government and the opposition. Now they have three others person, ex-political person that want to start a new dialogue, but they need to have a roadmap. The first thing is to have...
And there is no roadmap, you're saying?
I think they have now. They have clarified this point. I think they have 4 points they have to check with the Council is to have a referendum in this year, to have a freedom of political opposition, to recognize the opposition of Venezuela parliament, and then to be open to have external help for humanitarian help.
And let me ask Daniel Landsberg about this, because the whole process of the recall referendum, as you know, there's a referendum that's got us all worried on this continent right now. It's the Brexit referendum that's coming up on Thursday. We've seen referendums where you are in the United States. I remember one to recall the governor of California in particular. What's your religion when it comes to referendums?
So I think that referendums in Latin America, which are not, I mean, they tend to fill in where constitutional order is weak. Often you'll have a referendum to replace the Constitution, which is a very old Latin American tradition. This Constitution right now in Venezuela is actually the 26th iteration, which is, I believe, 2.5 times even what the French have managed. So it's a very almost hyper-constitutional system, and often referendums are used to legitimize changes into the process. What does happen, and what is unfortunate about this recall referendum, which makes it different than the Brexit referendum, is the amount of government control over the process itself. And to cite one example, when the CNE, which is the same organization, the Electoral Council that has to validate signatures for this referendum drive, was validating signatures for a petition by the Venezuelan government against U.S. sanctions, they were able to go through 10 million signatures in 36 hours. Now they have taken over a month to go through less than 1/5 of that. So the ability to basically bide their time is essentially unchecked as long as the courts are in the government's side. And then the most important thing is the fact that people aren't safe in this recall referendum. The names of the people who have signed have been posted online, which has a tradition in Venezuela dating back to the Tascón era of people who signed against Chavez losing their jobs, their public sector access afterwards. A very close friend of mine, Francisco Marquez, and his colleague, Gabriel San Miguel, were arrested last night on their way to try and assist with the signature drive in Portuguesa, and have been held without charge, incommunicado, without access to a lawyer, without access to their families now for over 36 hours. That is absolutely illegal, but there are no checks and balances. So the amount of wiggle room that the opposition has, the amount of impact that the opposition can have in this system, as it's organized right now, is really farcical.
So do you wish that Venezuela had an impeachment process like in neighboring Brazil? So
basically what these are in Latin America are votes of no confidence. Latin America, we have presidential systems in Latin America because at the time when the constitutions, the original constitutions were written, it was the US and France were the only two republics, and France was going through a rough patch. So it was modeled on the US system. But given the boom-bust cycles, the economic instability, the cults of personality, really what Latin America probably should have gone with was a more parliamentary system, because often presidents will have the highest possible approval rating. You know, Lula had 80% for a long time. Chavez had upper 60s for a long time. But at the same time, they'll often have the lowest. Dilma had 14%, 9%. When she was impeached. The impeachment process, the recall process, what they really are votes of no confidence.
Let me ask. Let me ask.
Always fit well.
Let me ask Christophe Ventura your reaction to Daniel Landsberg saying 2 of his friends have been detained because they're trying to organize the drive. The fact that the names are posted online makes it unsafe for those who've signed. is your view of the referendum?
I don't know these two cases. If it's the truth, it's very sad and not normal. I mean, it's clear. But you are in a country which is not in a normal situation. You have a country which is very polarized, where the radicalization of all political camps is very strong. So we are not in a normal country with mediation and working institutions and so on. No, we are in a situation of polarization where each actor is using what he has in his hands in order to eliminate his adversary. That's where we are. And the opposition and the governments are playing with different tools, but they are all playing the same game. What is at stake for people? I mean, because if not, it could be very complicated. You are in a country where the majority of people are Chavist. I mean, we can say it's wrong or not, but that's the case. It's a sociological majority in the country. The government
wasn't the case at the last election.
No, it's not the case, because in the last election, 2 million of Chavists didn't vote for Chavist. That's the problem. The government is criticized very highly, very strongly, but at the same time, the opposition is not popular and is very.
The population right now wants Maduro out.
But it doesn't mean that those people are in favor of the opposition, and that's the problem.
Well, they voted for the opposition
is unpopular
and they won the National
and very
Assembly.
divided, and that's why I think, that's my opinion, that the whole governments in the region, from the right or from the right wing, are thinking the same way, and they know that agree. To solve the problem, it's not the one instead of the other, but to find roadmap in order to work concretely for economical improvement.
But if you want to find a roadmap, then you would need like referees that right now there are the three presidents, former presidents that are in Republic
Spain, Panama, and the Dominican Republic.
Yes,
but they are
not neutral. They are not neutral. They were selected by Samper because originally the referee was going to be a representative from the Vatican, and the government of Maduro didn't accept it. Why? Because these are former friends of Venezuela, of the government of Maduro, and they are not neutral at all.
I can't say that.
That's one thing.
They have a mandate from the UNASUR, including Michel Temer from Brazil, Mauricio Macri from Argentina, which are not supposed to be the friends of Venezuela. First, and second, you won't find in any statement of the UNASUR, of the Organization of American States, the words you are using: political prisoners, humanitarian crisis. There is no mention of those words, or are the ones from the opposition. I'm sorry.
Political prisoners
in
the Almagro report.
Almagro report is asking, for instance, the liberation of political prisoners, and Zapatero went to Venezuela to try to use exactly what you say, the stability of the regime. That's what they are looking for, the stability of the regime, instead of looking for a transformation of the model, which is what most Venezuelans are asking, and the opposition is asking, simply to leave the voice of the people decide in a referendum if they want Maduro to continue or they don't want Maduro to continue.
The process is ongoing. So
well, they are trying. They will probably.
The opposition would like to have this victory to have a referendum tomorrow, but the National Council organization is working. I mean, we will have the answer at the end of the constitutional process.
As we were saying, they have been really slow. They have been trying to postpone. They have been. Adding new rules because this checking of the signatures, this is something that it's not on the Constitution. The Constitution says 1% ask, and they as you may know,
in 2007
not
there were new rules
of the population, but
these are 10 the rules
more
from
times,
2007,
2 million,
and you know that.
2 million signatures they collected in 2 days.
But you have to check.
Not the 200.
All right. A lot of reactions have been coming in on the hashtag F24 debate, many calling on Maduro to step down. Some saying, here's one, so many people think Maduro's socialism is effective only because he rejects capitalism. And a nod to the fact that Chavism itself remains popular in many circles, even if the current president is not. Now, there's another point on all this, and we mentioned the former Prime Minister of Spain, Mr. Zapatero, who's among those mediators. The New York Times running a story on how Venezuela casts a long shadow on the elections that are coming up next Sunday in Spain. They point to recent visits by the leader of the emerging center-right Ciudadanos party, Albert Rivera, to support Venezuela's opposition. And while he's at it, a chance to remind voters that back home, Podemos leader Pablo Iglesias was an advisor to Hugo Chavez and sat on the board of a think tank funded by Chavez. But Rivera is not the only one polishing his anti-Maduro credentials. The outgoing conservative prime minister who wants to keep his job, Mariano Rajoy, has his former justice minister defending jailed opposition politician Leopoldo López.
We can't talk about a state of law and much less of a democracy where the fundamental rights of a person are deprived. Leopoldo López is a person who has been deprived of his fundamental rights, who has not been given the right to a fair trial, who has been convicted without evidence and with interventions by the prosecution itself which have been recognized as illegitimate.
Christophe Ventura, a noble cause there, or is this the Venezuelan crisis bleeding into the Spanish election campaign?
That's an illustration of the specific Venezuelan situation in the world. I mean, do you know a lot of countries where you could have ex-former minister and political parties, for example, Les Républicains or the Socialist Party, directly involved in a political situation in another country, like a sort of colony? I mean, it sounds very strange that the Spanish parties are involved directly in the political Venezuelan domestic life.
Why are they involved?
And that's why I said,
because
yes,
Podemos
they are close.
Received more than $4 million to a foundation that is supported by Podemos, and of course they are attacking Podemos and telling them
it is not proved. And even if it's proven, I mean, you know,
it has been accepted by
you know, there are a lot of
Monedero, one of the Podemos, that he received this amount of money.
Is it more shocking that all these think tanks, for example, who are receiving money directly from Washington, from the US aid, or from any kind of private foundation? What's the difference? In the one case, it's democracy. On the other one, it's propaganda. That's what you say. It's an opinion.
I will add only there are no free lunch in politics.
Daniel Landsberg, are you surprised that there's so much talk of Venezuela on the Spanish campaign trail?
No, not really. Venezuela is, unfortunately, because it's it's my country, and I wish it would do well in a way that it hasn't lately. It is a cautionary tale in many ways, but it's a cautionary tale that's interpreted differently by different people and by different sectors. To the left, it's a cautionary tale about maybe mismanagement, about the sort of dangers of foreign cabals and intervention. To the right, it's a cautionary tale of division. It's a cautionary tale of inequality. There's a lot of cautionary tales to be gotten from Venezuela, and it's become, in a sense, sort of the ready-made example, not just in political dialogue, but even in movies and television. You watch True Detectives, or you watch House of Cards or Homeland, and when somebody is being chased and they have nowhere else to go and they're truly desperate, the worst place they can think to send them to is always Venezuela. So it's always going to be a part of the dialogue. The main difference between having Venezuela's political party fund Spanish campaigns is that the legality of that under Venezuelan law is technically illegal. Carlos Andrés Pérez, a former president who was impeached in the early 90s, that was basically the main thrust against him, was the fact that he was accused of having helped finance one side in a Nicaraguan election. And that's, so here again, you see the Venezuelan government's relationship to the law as something that applies to other people. And in Spain, that sort of divisiveness, the fact
but how do you feel about the former justice minister coming in to be the personal attorney for Leopoldo López, the opposition politician?
But that's what I'm saying. Venezuela right now is a battleground that extends far beyond its borders. Leopoldo Lopez right now is probably the most famous political prisoner in Latin America, one of the most famous political prisoners in the world. And that's something that the government has a lot of trouble justifying internationally. Even though it has been able to get, the government has been very good at negotiating alliances of convenience, which going back to the OAS, for example, which we were discussing earlier, they have a lot of clout still at the OAS because of small Caribbean islands that received lots of money from Petrocaribe and hope to do so again if oil prices ever recover. Macri, who ran very strongly on an anti-Maduro platform, both in saying that he was going to save Argentina from becoming Venezuela, and also in saving Latin America from the types of governments that Maduro represents. He has changed tack largely because he needs Venezuelan support, because he wants his foreign minister to be the next UN General Secretary. Temer, who was also mentioned previously, the last thing he could possibly want is the OAS sanctioning countries for undemocratic or for violations of democratic norms, given the unusual way in which he got his post in the first place.
All sides treading cautiously. Meanwhile, the crisis continues. I want to thank you, Daniel Landsberg, for joining us from Chicago. I want to thank Christophe Ventura, Natalia Brandler, Luis Calasante. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Shona Bhattacharya.
Hi, François.
An impassioned discussion when it comes to Venezuela.
That's right. Well, as you noted, the controversy here surrounds Spain's Podemos party, a far-left party that could come in second behind the Partido Popular, please excuse my Spanish, which is terrible, which is ruled, the ruling party now in Spain, and that is headed by Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy. Now, that electoral upset is expected following the June 26th general election, and several of Podemos's leaders, including party head Pablo Iglesias and this man right here on my screen, who is Íñigo Errejón. Again, I'm terrible with these names, I'm sorry. They worked for and advised President Hugo Chavez before he died. Now, this website, OK Diario, dug up this footage of Errejón, so one of the big shots in Podemos. This footage is from 2014, and we see Errejón speaking at the Venezuelan consulate in Barcelona, and he says that Venezuela is his adopted home. He also raises his fist in a pro-Chavez salute. Chavez vive, la lucha sigue, long live Chavez. The struggle continues. We can actually hear that. It's just a few seconds long.
Canalla, les queremos. Chávez vive, la lucha sigue.
Let me just ask on this, Luis Calasante. Of course, this is from 2014. Now, back then, you had, remember, actor Sean Penn and the likes. Before they were with Hugo Chavez. A lot of these people, they loved Hugo Chavez. They don't love his successor.
I think they have a romantic way to see the Chavismo.
Even now? Even today?
No, I don't think so. I think they can see the really a face that have Venezuela at this moment. And I think even they can have this romantic view of Chavez, but they believe that what happened in Venezuela, shortage in food, shortage in medicine, blackout in power. So this is a reality.
Well, in fact, so the Podemos leaders are trying to distance themselves to a certain extent. We had this same Errejón who tweeted about meeting with 177 economists from around the world and saying that Podemos's economic policies were sound and that they were a good idea. That tweeted was replied to. And so the Ciudadanos party, which is the center-right, the kind of...
Yeah, both of these are the insurgent parties.
Exactly.
Podemos and Ciudadanos, one on the left, one on the right.
Exactly. So we have this this Twitter user saying, you know, now Rivertito, who is Rivero, who is the head of the Ciudadano Party, he's going to say that these economists are all from Venezuela and from Greece, trying to discredit Podemos. But a lot of people really are afraid that if Podemos does come to such prominence in Spain, that what happened and what's happening now in Venezuela would be a cautionary tale. We have that all over the internet. This one person saying, you know, that while Venezuela is struggling to get out of communism, Spain is blindly walking to disaster.
Yeah, and it looks as if Spanish people are forgetting what a populist government can lead to. And Pablo Iglesias from Podemos.
But wait a minute, one of them is rooted in the Indignados, and the other is a former army man, Hugo Chavez. It's not the same thing, is it?
No, it's not, but they have the same idea that you can destroy political parties, that, you know, they are talking about direct democracy, and we see that finally direct democracy ends up being controlled by a political party. I mean, there's a long story of destroying the economy, and Podemos has been very adamant in the same ideas that Chavez was. But I just wanted to mention
very briefly, because we're out of time.
Very briefly, is about the subject of violation of human rights. Everybody talks about Leopoldo López. Yesterday, we had the director of the Institute Kasla from Czech Republic, Tamara Suhu, and the mother of one of the younger prisoners in Venezuela. He's been isolated. No, he cannot see his lawyer. He's in isolation. In isolation.
We're out of time. I'm going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you, Natalia. Again, as you see, the debate about Venezuela bleeding into the debate about the Spanish elections. Thank you, Shona Bhattacharya. Thanks to our panel, and thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.